It's now a question of survival for many inhabitants in Venezuela's capital. Oil prices have surged, the economy has crashed, and the rule of law has collapsed, leaving them hopeless and without protection. In this video, regular citizens are looting a supermarket. Food riots that have become a common sight in Caracas. Many Venezuelans are now eating fewer than 3 meals per day. People just can't afford to buy groceries anymore. The population is furious. They say the state can no longer protect them, so some have decided to take the law into their own hands.
It's another guy they caught trying to steal.
This amateur footage shows a crowd standing over an alleged robber. He's lying on the ground, bleeding from his head. Dozens of people are surrounding him idle, watching him in agony without lifting a finger. In the end, this man was burnt alive and eventually died from his injuries. His name was Roberto Fuentes Bernal, a 42-year-old cook. His aunt is still in shock. She says it's a public execution and that those responsible are still on the run.
Officials still don't know what's causing the violent skin reaction that you see in these photos. But in the past 2 weeks, at least 40 students and staff members at Lake Forest Elementary School reported mysterious bug bites and skin rashes, some more severe than others. And now, Saddleback Valley Unified School District officials say they've received 5 new reports of similar symptoms from other schools in the district, but they haven't disclosed which ones.
At stores in Kingston, the capital of Jamaica, shoppers are piling their carts full of canned goods, crackers, and water. Lots of water. They're getting ready for the arrival of Hurricane Matthew. The storm weakened slightly on Saturday, but it's still the most powerful storm to churn through the Atlantic since Hurricane Felix in 2007. Winds are topping out at 145 miles an hour, making it a Category 4 storm, stronger than Hurricane Katrina, which devastated the U.S. Gulf Coast in 2005. Forecasters say Matthew could be the most powerful storm to cross Jamaica since they began keeping records. They expect Matthew to arrive at Jamaica's southern coast sometime Monday, putting it on course to hit Kingston, as well as Jamaica's only oil refinery. Motorists are lining up at gasoline stations to stock up on fuel. The Prime Minister's office said workers are preparing emergency shelters across the country. Disaster coordinators, police, and troops all are on standby.
Overflowing rivers are causing flooding in several areas near the capital city, Adelaide. Authorities have lined the banks of the Gawler and Wakefield rivers with 60,000 sandbags. 80,000 recorded lightning strikes have damaged power lines across the state. Outages have affected over 1 million residents. The weather is expected to worsen and citizens have been told to prepare. Experts say up to 100 millimeters of rain is expected to fall on the Adelaide Hills region from Sunday to Tuesday.
It is the first day of China's week-long National Day holiday and the traffic volume has already peaked. The number of Chinese tourists and passengers traveling boomed in just one day. Road passenger flow reached its summit with an estimated 14 million travels on day one. Tickets were sold out and train stations were packed with travelers.
There's the sunset. I don't know what that is.
federal and local officials are investigating a threat against Mosaic Company.
Of course, all of this happening as the company is dealing with hundreds of frustrated homeowners who have fears over contaminated drinking water. Jake Peterson is following this story. Jacob, what do we know about the threat this morning?
Yeah, good morning. I just got off the phone with local authorities who are working to get me information right now. I can tell you the Sheriff's Department and the FBI are investigating a threatening letter with a suspicious powder that was sent to Mosaic's headquarters in Lithia. It was received last night. We're still working to find out what the letter said and who it was sent to specifically. Now, people who live near the plant are upset about contaminated water that drained into an underground aquifer. There were even protests 2 weeks ago today in Mulberry. We will continue to follow this and bring you the latest when it's available.
It is one of the most spectacular settings in the entire country, but this landscape's under the most serious threat it's ever faced. We start this leg of our journey, though, around 500 miles to the east, in what's been at the heart of a massive oil boom that hit its peak 3 years ago, when it totally changed the little town of Williston.
There were a number of companies, a lot of my friends themselves, that were shutting their businesses down. They were on the border of bankruptcy, really, and over the last decade, they've been able to make more money than they've made in the last 30 years running their businesses. People that have made fortunes and made the money have been able to help pour that money back into the community. And we have a new high school. We've got a new rec center, which my kids play at 3 times a week. It's amazing.
In a town where oil brought such riches, there's frustration when the government gets in the way of business on the grounds of environmental concerns.
Then we get an outside influence on the federal aspect that comes in, and stroke of a pen, a pipeline shut down, or stroke of a pen, all of a sudden you have to worry about Clean Water Acts that don't apply to you at all, that you can never really influence. And it's tough to see that happen because you're really just left with this helpless feeling. You can't do anything about it.
As we left Williston behind, we met Brandon, an oil worker, unimpressed by Hillary Clinton's talk of reducing carbon emissions to stop climate change.
What we do here is regulated and under the control of the government, and you have places like China that have no regulations that are dumping pollution into the atmosphere, and there's nothing being said about that.
But as we approached the stunning rugged terrain of Glacier National Park, we also came across Chris.
That is serious fracking operation that's going on.
Who said man's impact on the climate was being directly felt right here.
You're not going to have the amount of snow required to sustain the glaciers if you have the amount of melt we've been experiencing because of the warmer temperatures.
The beauty of the national park is breathtaking, but it's far harder to find a glacier than it once was. Well, this is what the edge of a glacier looks like, and the position of this and the position it used to be in is exactly what the climate change debate boils down to. Say if we came here in 1911, what did this look like?
We'd be under the ice.
Right here,
yeah.
We'd be under the ice.
Yeah, some glaciers have basically ceased to become glaciers. They're no longer have any moving ice, and they're now permanent snowfields or stagnant ice.
Do you see that there could be a time when, in the near few decades, where Glacier National Park may not have any glaciers?
It's possible. It is. I believe mankind is contributing to the warming. The climate has always warmed and cooled naturally. What's going on now, why now is different, is the rate of warming is so much faster.
Disappearing glaciers are already having an impact on the water supplies here, on the forests, and on the wildlife. But as with many issues in America, climate change has been politicized, and facts can often give way to emotion.
California Governor Jerry Brown this week signed into law a very different kind of bathroom bill for his state. Rather than restrict access to public restrooms for transgender people, as is in the case of North Carolina's infamous House Bill 2, California's new legislation will ensure equal access to public toilets regardless of a person's gender identity. Starting next spring, all of California's single-user bathrooms in public buildings will be designated as gender neutral. A According to Assemblyman Phil Ting, a Democrat who sponsored the bill, this establishes the nation's most inclusive restroom access law among states.
The Islamic militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for a suicide car bombing attack in the Somali capital Mogadishu. At least 3 people were killed on Saturday and 4 others were injured after a vehicle rammed into the Blue Sky restaurant. The attack took place during the afternoon when many people were out to lunch. At least 77 people have been injured after a gas cylinder exploded on Saturday in a restaurant in the Spanish town of Balis Malaga on the southern coast. The explosion occurred at about 1700 GMT during a festival in the town, which is close to the popular tourist destination Malaga. The local emergency unit spokesman says 5 people were being treated for serious injuries. Spain's País newspaper said a cook at the restaurant was able to alert customers to a fire in the kitchen, which had given most enough time to escape serious injury.
Mr. Wang Jianlin said that this is the biggest bubble in history. This is the biggest bubble ever that we are seeing. Do you agree? We've been talking about bubble for many, many years, but it continues to grow bigger and bigger, and it never seemed to burst.
Well, I would expect the next sentence he could have spoke that is he responsible, for this, what he described as a bubble. But honestly, I do not see that there is really imminent bubble because many China watchers, China experts, they expected long ago and time again that while China's housing market is ushering in a bubble, and that even can endanger the Chinese economy on the whole. But all this sort of prediction was really defunct.
The largest hospital in rebel-held East Aleppo is reported to have been bombed for the 2nd time since the government launched its offensive to recapture the whole city on September 22nd. The Syrian American Medical Society said 2 barrel bombs hit the hospital, and there were reports of a cluster bomb as well. There was no information about casualties. The hospital had already been hit on Wednesday, along with the 2nd largest hospital in the area.
Government forces have clashed with rebels north of Aleppo and within the city center area. Rebel sources, however, denied any further advances north of the city by government forces. This comes after Syrian forces seized the Handarat camp area north of Aleppo on Thursday. The rebel official said government forces had advanced and then retreated.
Syrian troops shelled the city's old quarter while Russian warplanes bombarded it. A doctors group says the largest hospital on the rebel side of the city was hit. A Russian newspaper says Russia is now sending more warplanes to Syria. Russia is backing the Syrian government's campaign to retake Aleppo. A U.S. spokesman says diplomatic efforts to stop the fighting are, quote, on life support.
Now let's turn our attention to the border area between India and Pakistan. Now, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has urged India and Pakistan to exercise restraint. Tensions are on the rise between the 2 South Asian countries due to ceasefire violations along the line of control in Kashmir. Secretary Ban Ki-moon also called on New Delhi and Islamabad to engage in dialogue to deal with their border issues.
Bulgaria's parliament has approved a law banning full-face veils in public places. People who break the new law will face a fine of up to 1,500 levs, or more than $800 US. Muslims make up 13% of Bulgaria's population. Opposition parties and human rights groups have condemned the law, saying it reflects and encourages intolerance and racism. France and Belgium have imposed similar bans.
Brian and Karen, students tell me they look forward to the opening game every season. They say this year the theme was USA. Students say they band together to buy things like flags, shirts, and banners, but this year they were told to leave it all outside the stadium.
Part of American tradition for as long as most of us can remember.
It's a really big deal. It means a lot.
But the American flag not welcome for students to wave inside this stadium last Friday night. In a video shared on Twitter, a police officer is asking Brandon Conrad to leave.
Our principal told us it's okay. Our actual individual grade principal told us it's okay. And when we get there, Duffield says it's not okay, which is our athletic director.
Every time we asked why, every time we tried to justify our case, they just simply came back with, take it up with Duffield, and we still haven't heard anything from him. Flag being a symbol of our country and everything being taken away from us, it's kind of a double standard almost.
The U.S. is ending its symbolic role as the holder of the Internet's address book. The U.S. Department of Commerce says its contract with the nonprofit Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN, has expired. The U.S. will now hand over control of ICANN to the global community of Internet engineers, academics, businesses, and non-government and government groups. Several lawmakers sued to block the change, but the case was thrown out by a federal judge in Texas. The U.S. had planned the handover as early as 1990 and started the transition in March 2014. The U.S. has managed the Internet address system for about 2 decades.
All right, well, there is a new policy at the University of Michigan that allows students to choose their preferred pronouns to appear on the class rosters.
Yes, we've entered the post-rational phase of American history. All of this prompted one student to choose His Majesty, which he says demonstrates the ridiculous nature of the policy.